Okay, so now they'll be just you and the thing. So go ahead and repeat what you just said. Where are we?
We're at the Vicksburg-Tallulah Regional Airport at Mound, Louisiana, which just off of I-20 and Highway 80, about 10 miles east of Tallulah.
What's going on today?
This is a formation clinic. People that participate in air shows have to have a sign off. The pilots have to be trained to do formation flying. And they come from all over the South. And this is a yearly deal. And Vicksburg-Tallulah is the host. And as you see, there's probably 30 or 40 planes here today, mostly World War II trainers, but we have a C-47, and we have 3 P-51 Mustangs, and we have a Corsair also.
Now, Tallulah has tell me about Tallulah's history with Delta and flying going back to the 20s.
Okay, in the early 20s, C.E. Woolman from the Department of Entomology in Tallulah, and Bert Code, who worked at the Experiment Station 2, had a novelty idea of putting out insecticides or dust in that case with an airplane. Before that, it was by saddle application or with mules, and it just wasn't efficient, and it was hard on the people and the animals. So they went to Congress in 1922 and lobbied Congress for this novelty or novel thing that at that time most people had never seen an airplane, and they developed crop dusting. In fact, the first air dusting was in August of 1922. Now, it had been done some trees in I think Illinois, but to row crop, this was the place that first experiment was done, which is in Tallulah.
And what happens to that airline company eventually?
Eventually, Mr. Woolman was the president of Delta, and Mr. Code was also high up in Delta. That was later on in the 30s. They moved to Monroe, then I think Dallas, and wound up in Atlanta. So Delta did not start in Tallulah, but 2 of the men that developed crop dusting evolved into the Delta Airlines, and ironically, they both died in the same year, 1966.
Tallulah also has a lot of some other great history. Tell me about General Grant.
Grant's, well, one of the main battles in the Civil War was at Vicksburg, and they had to go up and down the river and bypass the batteries and the guns from Vicksburg, and they cut it off, really cut the Confederacy in two as the river went. But Grant's soldiers went down all through these parishes, East Carroll, Madison, Tensall, and they had like a scorched earth mission. They pretty much burned all the plantations, and I think it was only four houses left in Madison Parish after the war. The rest of them were all burned. Now, there was a town below Tallulah called Richmond, and it was burned totally to the ground, and it never was rebuilt. And now Tallulah is like 2 miles north of there, and it's along the railroad. Richmond didn't have the railroad.
Grant's Canal. So somebody wants to learn a little bit of history. It's a great thing to stop and see.
The river has changed course as it is now. It's a big bend there. The river used to go north of Vicksburg and bend around. The gunboats had to go the gauntlet of the cannons. So the engineers, the federal engineers, thought if they could dig a canal across this peninsula, they would bypass Vicksburg. Now they started it. They got some of it finished, but then the floods came and they didn't have any more men to work the digging in the canal.
Okay. What about 1927? There's a lot of history here from the Great Flood.
Up until 1927, it flooded. The Mississippi River flooded in this area an average of every 10 years. Now, there was a flood in the 1890s. There was a flood in 1912, 1922. The levee held, but the water came up over the levee. In fact, right where we're looking right here, but the levee held. And then in 1927, the levee broke, which is about 3 miles from where we're standing. And since then, the Corps of Engineers has built the levees, and we don't have the flooding anymore. But it's, I think, 73. It was a real chance that the levee was not going to hold.
Tell me about the photos you guys have from the flood of 27.
Okay, the Department of Agriculture, they had the entomology department. In the 20s, they took pictures of all the crops and the scenes and the production, and so in addition to that, they took pictures of everyday life in Tallulah and Madison Parish. And we have probably over 1,000 of them at the museum. They're on glass negative. Most people have never seen a glass negative, but the clarity of that glass negative cannot be produced today.
Okay, I think that's pretty much. Anything else that you want to say that I didn't?
No, well, you say
Okay, all right. Hold on a second here.